Hi, I'm Jennifer Barrett, and welcome to All Things Apostolic. Today we will be continuing our discussion about Gen Z. So thank you so much for joining me today. I want to give a little brief introduction to our guest. Boston Young is the pastor of the Rock Sierras, which is a new church, relatively new church in Cameron Park in California. He is also, and has been for several years, how many years? The youth pastor.
8
years. 8 years,
yeah.
My goodness. 8 years, the youth pastor at the Rock Church in Elk Grove, California. He has a Master of Arts degree in ministry, and I understand your pain. I'm in a doctoral program as well. He is in his doctoral program, but on to the dissertation phase. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And he's working on a dissertation related to the topic of integrating Gen Z into leadership. So it'll be a doctorate in leadership. And additionally, he is married, has a beautiful wife, Haley, and 2 children. We're today talking about Gen Z, but he has 2 children who are part of the new generation Alpha. So maybe we might end with a little bit of discussion on Gen Alpha, because that one's coming up. So in the previous episode, I shared with our listeners some research related to Gen Z, and not everything's negative, but a lot of the data that we now have, because we're finally getting to the point where Gen Zers are a little bit older, and we have some social study research on them, and we're finding that they have higher rates of anxiety, higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicide. So one of the questions would be, in your experience in ministry, are you seeing that increase in this particular generation? Because I assume most of your youth group, they're all Gen Z.
Pretty much all Gen Z, yeah.
So are you seeing that? And then I also presented some research by social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, and whether or not you agree with his explanation of it, which ties back into this is the first generation that really has been tethered to the internet and to social media consistently. And so he's trying to look for what is the underlying phenomenon that would explain it here in the United States, but even elsewhere, nationally or internationally. So do you agree with that? So do you see those trends, and then do you agree with that hypothesis of the underlying? And we'll start there.
So I definitely agree with those trends. There's no, that's been my experience as well. So there's no negating that.
Now, when you say you agree with it, do you believe that it's happening in society in general, but are we also seeing an uptick in those behaviors or in those mental health issues within the church as well, not just in society? And I know this is anecdotal. We don't have data on that in apostolic churches.
Do you mean specific to depression, and
anxiety,
like
and yes?
So I would say specific to my experience, I wouldn't say the depression and anxiety.
Okay.
Honestly. Because there's a support group, there's a body of people who are working together. Now there's outliers. There's but I would say for the majority of the kids in my youth group, I'm speaking anecdotally, I'm not speaking of the data, I'm speaking of the Rock Church Elk Grove.
Yeah.
The majority, anxiety, depression, those kind of things are not above average.
They're not.
It's not. Now there's a lot of other issues that I'm sure we'll get into that we do have to work through, that we have to fight through. But in what I've seen so far is there have been cases, but I would not say it's the norm.
Because in 8 years, you're not seeing trending upward in that 8-year period. No. And that's really beneficial. I think, and I've spoken about this in a previous episode, that the fact that we have strong families, and apostolic churches support families. We want strong families. Yeah. But then also we are strong families of faith. We have churches, and it's really a second family. Everybody's very interactive, and we worship together. And so strong faith system. I think those two key things have buffered our apostolic youth from following the world's trends. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And actually, it's funny, as a youth pastor, we do a very unique form of outreach using that understanding. Is our kids, there's not a lot of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of that feeling isolated.
Like severe depression and suicide.
There is some of that. So I'm not trying to say there's none of that. But in 8 years, it's not getting worse. It's one or two every couple of years. You get what I'm saying? It's not zero
Outliers,
suicides.
like you said. Yeah.
Not one or two suicides. It's zero suicides.
Right.
But what we've actually seen to work is we'll go to the park and play volleyball, and there's 100 kids out there who are friends, and they're happy, and there's no cliques, and everybody's together, and everyone's having a good time. And we've had large amounts of people, young people, come to church because they're attracted to that. They come and they say, "Can we play volleyball with you?" So you have these isolated young. So this is where I was saying is, as a whole, societally, that data is true. Is these isolated kids, but these isolated kids are longing for what we have. And so we literally it's almost accidental outreach. Is we're just going to the park to have fun, but there's a bunch of kids having fun together, and it's like a bug to a light. It's they swarm it. And I've baptized probably 20 kids.
Wow.
That we didn't knock on their door. We just were playing, and it wasn't a strategy thing. We're just having fun playing volleyball, and kids came. And
my daughter's part of the youth group, and she's mentioned a number of times that it'll be a youth event happening on a Friday or Saturday night, and that people just driving by, strangers, not part of the youth group, will see 100 and how many? 100 and something young people.
20 to 60, depending on summer or winter.
But a group just out there playing together and having a good time, and they're drawn to that, just driving by and seeing it. Because luckily, where the field is in that area, where the recreational area is right on a main road. So it draws people in. So that's great. So the good thing is you agree that the data does reflect societally what's happening, but the church has been largely buffered from that, which is great. Now, so I guess that leads me to two questions. Do you see any other, besides the strong families, strong church, do you see any other thing that's helping to buffer?
Well, so a lot of kids, society, at least in my research, the kids don't have anyone to go to. So they've lost trust for their teachers. And we're talking as a whole societally, not the church.
And very in general,
So they've lost trust for their teachers. They don't like their schools. There's not the respect even for their teachers. Their parents, for the economy or whatever reason, are busy working, distracted, addicted, doing their own thing. They have no one to go to with their problems. They have no one to go to. So if you're depressed or you have anxiety, you have no one. You're just a 16-year-old kid with depression and anxiety, and I'm sure we'll get into why those things. But, well, in the church, if a kid has depression and anxiety, they have, in the Rock Church, they have 1,000 people they can go to. And they have people to relate to, and they have people to connect with, and they have a youth pastor or a youth staff or the coffee shop director or the ministry, the Sunday school. There's so many people for them to connect with, and so many people that genuinely care about them and love them and want to help them, that they might feel that same depression or anxiety or whatever it is, but there's someone to guide them. And I mean, I'm not young anymore, but I remember being a kid is like when you're 16, 17 years old, you don't necessarily want to go to your dad or your mom for everything. Well, I had people I could go to in the church to talk to, and that's something that is more prevalent with Gen Z than it was even with millennials. So
you think they have a preference? They can go to their parents, but they sometimes have a preference to go to someone else, and the church has that available, trustworthy people. And is there anything specific you do to create that openness, or for them to know that availability, or it's just part of the church culture?
It has to be part of the church culture. I don't know if it's a part of every church culture. It's a family kind of church. So that's part of the deal. Is there's a I was talking to a guy last week in Bible study, and he said, when I come to the Rock Church, I feel like it's a family. Like there's 1,000 people in the room that care about me.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's very, very valuable to Gen Z when everything is so siloed and isolated and small. You know, this is my little world.
Right.
And so you're connected to something a lot bigger than you.
So then in Jonathan Haidt's research, he points to social media as probably not necessarily the only reason, but an underlying reason that has led to the data that we're seeing on a national and international scale. Would you agree that social media has contributed to these, or is it an aspect of social media? What are your thoughts about the pros and cons of social media?
So I'm not a 100% anti-social media person, but I'm a very against social media person at the same time.
And I should probably clarify for you too, because in a previous one, how he defines social media is that we're not talking about FaceTiming or Zooming or texting where there's interaction between us, even though it might be mediated by the computer or by our phones. But he's talking about a system like Facebook or TikTok or Instagram where there are algorithms that are feeding information into the young people, and they don't really have control over what they're seeing. So it's corporations feeding things. So social media, that's what he's referring to, and not something like texting.
Got it. Okay.
Just to make sure we're on the same page.
So one of the things with social media is, and this is not anything new with me, it's a gigantic time waster.
Yes,
okay, so,
yeah.
I mean,
7 to 9 hours a day for preteens and teenagers.
And that's not, I would say that is soft. That's not like a over-exaggerated number. So you're losing a lot of your direction. A lot of kids, to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, they don't read anymore.
Yeah.
They don't. Okay, so I'll go negative and then I'll go positive.
Okay.
So the negatives, they don't read anymore. They aren't consuming media that is guiding them anywhere normally. They're if you're just doom scrolling, just scrolling through whatever comes up next in your feed, you're going down a list, and it's siloing you deeper and deeper into an algorithm where you're only seeing what you want to see because it's based off of what interests you.
Yes.
So if you're interested in blue skateboards and you click on blue skateboards, the algorithm marks it and it feeds you, and you get deeper and deeper into where your whole feed is nothing but blue skateboards. Which you can see is very, I mean, you can kind of direct someone not to get conspiracy, but you can literally direct your whole way of thinking.
Right.
So a lot of young people, if there's so we're saying general societally, is you're just being directed by social media. There's no one telling you that you should not be on social media. There's nothing, it's everything bent against you. Okay, so that's the negative. But at the same time, we are seeing lots of positives that are tied to social media, such as
we need to hear some of those.
So
I think I've depressed
so this is one of
listeners.
the positives is, so every millennial and boomer and every other Gen Xer, everyone loves to say that Gen Zs have the attention span of a goldfish.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 seconds or whatever. And that's true.
Right, because of, things moving so quickly.
But that's just a filter. Okay, so don't think of that as an attention span. Think of it as a filter.
Okay.
Since these kids were 6 years old, they've been constantly bombarded by new information, nonstop, 24/7. They have access to any piece of information at 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, constantly. So within 2 seconds, your daughter can recognize if she likes something or not, and know to swipe to the next or not. She's been programmed to do that. Okay, not
so
for me.
she's filtering very quickly.
She's filtering. It's not it's not attention span. It's filtration. Okay, because this is where it's a positive is that everyone loves to hate that Gen Z have short attention span. Well, long format video and audio is at an all-time high. Okay, my youth group will sit down and listen to a 2-hour podcast without thinking about it.
Podcasts are so long.
My young people will sit down and watch something that I would never watch because it's boring. And they're watching lectures of a guy at a college that I wouldn't watch if I was in the college. And it's because that little filter, it's got past their filtration system. They liked it, and they'll buy in. And so they'll sit down and watch 4 hours of Peterson or Rogan or whoever it is. I'm not saying if they should be or not be. I'm saying once societally, if you can get through that filtration system, they'll sit down and watch 4 hours.
Because I always worry in our services, sermons are sometimes an hour, but a lot of times the 30, 45 minutes would probably be the average. And I worry about the attention span of our young people being able to stay engaged in the sermon, because you don't want pastors who have to do antics to maintain attention for that long. But you feel like if they have a personal interest, they will be able to maintain their attention.
So the deal for me is not trying to have the coolest lights and show and do the most backflips and have the most whatever. The real deal is you've got to get through their filtration system. And their filtrations, just from my research, the Gen Z, it's not about, millennials are not my favorite. I am a millennial, so I'm allowed to say that. We were all about the lights in the show, and it had to be the cool. Gen Z are about the purpose.
Unfortunately, we have to stop the conversation here, but there is more to come. So please be sure to join us on the next episode as we continue our interview with Boston Young.